Welcome to the Pregnancy Loss Podcast, the place I created for moms like us. Pregnancy loss is all-encompassing and creates an overarching theme that runs through our lives forever. We have to learn to live with and beside the grief of losing our baby. We have to learn how to live again, how to parent again, how to engage and interact and be social again, how to communicate effectively to connect with our spouses and significant others. We have to find who we are now. I'm here to empower and inspire you to live a life even with our unique circumstances. We cannot change what happened, but we can grow and use that strength and resilience to create a life that we love. I'm here to share everything I know about grief, motherhood, loss, marriage, friendship, and parenting. I'm here to encourage you to find the beautiful side of grief, the side where we don't have to isolate ourselves or suppress the need to share stories, the side where you have moms just like you to support and encourage you. The side where we become the best versions of ourselves, not in spite of our loss, but thanks to it. Pregnancy loss is devastating, but it can also be an opportunity to reflect on who we were and who we want to become. So join me every Tuesday for a new episode on the Pregnancy Loss Podcast. Let's jump in. Today on the Pregnancy Loss and Motherhood Podcast, we have a very wonderful guest today. Her name is Courtney Hart. She's actually a local mom that I connected with through one of our shared Facebook groups, and she is also a lost mom. In 2016, they had a TFMR at 20 weeks, and this was right before the 2016 election, which brought on a lot of feelings, and it continues to because of the political climate at the time. At the time we recorded this, we are getting into that political climate again. So it's been very challenging for her, but she is sharing her story, and I'm so honored and grateful that she is sharing with us today, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hey mamas, welcome back to another episode of the Pregnancy Loss and Motherhood Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today we have a wonderful guest. Her name is Courtney. So I am just going to let her introduce herself and tell you all about herself.
Yeah, I'm Courtney. I'm going to start off with my age just because I think that's important.
ASL.
I'm 34. If that sounds right. It's at this age, it's like, okay, how old am I? In middle 30s. Sounds good. I am married. We've been married for 11 years. I have my rainbow baby daughter, and she just turned 6 this week. So we just got done celebrating that.
Yay!
Yes, and then I have my angel baby. His name is Sawyer. We'll talk about him later. I am a wedding planner full time, typically working in Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. That basically consumes my life. But
yeah, oh my gosh.
Things that I love and like a priority for me is like exercising, working out. And I love like design of any sort. So like fashion design or like home interior too. So those are like my things I wish I had more time to do.
Yeah. Well, I guess you kind of get to like incorporate at least the design aspect into your work, which is probably, do you love wedding planning? Like
I do.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 12 years now. 12 years.
Oh,
yeah. So, I love planning. I love logistics. The design portion of it is like where I truly I can never get like angry about it. Like when you're doing logistics, you're dealing with people, you can't,
yeah, it's hard.
That come up. But, the design portion of it, you can't get like you're just working with concepts, and you're working with people to make sure that they like their design, but it's nothing along the lines of like dealing with people the day of.
Oh my God. Yeah. Everything I hear about the wedding industry, like even wedding photographers, like it takes over your whole life, especially because there's like an actual wedding season, apparently, right? That's like super busy, which is coming up, right? Is that
ours usually is like May to October, but then you've got like the rush that is usually like August to October, which is so weird to me. Knock on wood, I don't have really that this year, and last year I did, and so I'm heavy on the front end this year. So usually every single year I get like a break, per se.
Yeah.
Where it'll be like I'm heavy on the back end, and then I'll slowly kind of ramp up throughout the year, and then be heavy on the back end again. Where I almost have like time off around the holidays, but it was so heavy on the front end this year. So I had couples who in December were looking for their venue for July. So there was no break anymore. It was just constant.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going straight into the wedding season starting in May. So this is my craziest month.
Oh my gosh.
A break. I'm very much looking forward to the end of the year now. But
yeah, well, thank you for being here with that being your truth, right?
Well, that's what I'm really glad to have Sunday at 1 p.m. because I'm like, all my evenings are gone for April, and they have been since the beginning of March. And my couples are like, we need an evening. I was like, well, okay.
Sorry. Yeah, no. Something I tell all of my guests is like, I'm a mom of 4. Like, if you go on my appointment calendar and you'll see it's like all evenings or, day on the weekends, like my family, like the reason I do this is to support my family. So I'm not going to like, if I have to cancel something, if something comes up, like, I'm not going to take the day that I'm with them, cause that's like my stay-at-home mom time and then my work time. So like, I'll get requests like, can we do like 4:00 on Friday? And I'm like, that's right after school. I'm sorry, it's like impossible.
No, and
it's so funny.
When I first started in this position, I didn't know. I knew I wanted to do like hospitality, if that's what I went to school for, but then I didn't know like wedding planning was like a thing. Until we had like a guest speaker, and at that time, I was 2021. 22, but I had always kind of been a traditionalist in the sense of like, I want to get out of college, I want to get married, I want to have a family. And then, so when the guest speaker came in, she was like, oh yeah, it's so nice. I get to set my schedule so that I always have like 2 weekends with my family. I get to basically create my own schedule being a wedding planner. I was like, this is I was like, I can have the professional career, but I can also have like my family and not have it, overlap, and I have control over my schedule, so I'm not missing out on things. I can still go on field trips with her and stuff like that. So
I know, always I feel, that's what we as moms, we're trying to plan our work around our life. That's where we want to be. So that's awesome. Honestly, I love talking about like planning things and like pretty things. I love everything being beautiful and like colorful. Another day, but yeah, so I wanted to have you on because you are a lost mom, or whatever phrase you prefer. Some people don't like that because it's like, we didn't lose our baby. It's like, they died or whatever. But I don't know. Do you want to share about Sawyer?
Yeah, so we'll just dive right into that.
Yeah.
I'll try to get into like the nitty gritty right away, because I feel like there's some good conversations that we could have,
Totally.
Once we get through it all. And gosh, it would have been in July of 2016 that we found out we were pregnant. Obviously son, we knew that we were having a boy. We had found that out. Everything was kind of going sort of as planned, although we thought we were only like 8 weeks along when we went in for our first scan, and she was like, oh, that's a big baby. Like you're at like 12 weeks. So it was already like, oh my God, I missed like 4 weeks that time with him of like experiencing being pregnant, right? Like, I don't know, you miss that time, especially when it gets cut short, get to like, it was like that time I wish I would have known and I could have experienced, in hindsight. And I was like, oh, I was feeling like crap. Pregnant. But, so yeah, it was 12 weeks, and all of a sudden I'm just like, oh my God, we're already hitting like the second, like out of the first trimester. Like we need to announce, we need to find out what the gender is. I want to announce, like, blah, 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 just super rushed to do it, super excited. And so we did, we announced that we were having a baby and that we were, having a boy and like his name and everything. And then, we went to our 20-week anatomy scan, and that's clearly where things went downhill. Did the full anatomy scan, kind of quiet during the scan itself. We could, in hindsight, we were looking at thinking about what like the tech was doing, and she was always kind of like going back to a certain area to measure things, but we don't know. This is our first video. We all had only gone through, I think they do that at like technically 12 weeks where they're supposed to, measure back here, like the nuchal fold and stuff like that. But which that had come back okay. So this was an anatomy scan. They put us back in the room, and that's when, my OB came in. Thank God my husband came with to that one, and he had the flexibility to be there. Came back in and was like, okay, well, your son has what is called Dandy Walker. Now, we don't know what that is. And she gives like a brief overview of it. And I don't think wants to get into detail, because what are we going to do? We're going to go home. We're going to Google, because we want to get all the information. So Dandy Walker is a malformation in the brain where it just doesn't fully develop. But the problem is that it's such a wide scale. There's malformation and there's variant. I cannot remember for the life of me right now which is the more severe one, but at the end of the day, you still don't know what it's going to be until your child is actually born. So at that point, I mean, we Ubered home, and I am literally sobbing in the back. I'm calling my work and telling them, like, I don't know when I'm going to be in. I'm not coming in for like the 2 weeks, cancel my appointments, which was hard because I was wedding planning at the time. So I kind of had to have my boss like cover some things for me. And so they had us go in for a level 2 ultrasound at the time we were in Chicago. So Northwestern Prentice Hospital. We went into a level 2. And at that point, we also knew that he had holes in his heart. That was the other diagnosis for the ultrasound. So we went for that level 2, and they did an echocardiogram through Lori's because they're connected. She came in, confirmed what we're seeing with the heart, and then basically was like, okay, well, when he's born, here's the next steps of what we're going to do. It's basically like we cart him off to the other side of the building, and, if we have to perform like surgeries right away, or, being in the NICU, like things like that, what is it going to look like? And it was very alarming already, like, whoa, this is what our life is going to look like if we continue with this pregnancy. Because obviously when we got home from the anatomy scan the first time, we're Googling Dandy Walker, and I happened to come across an article of somebody who had that, and they chose to terminate. And I'm thinking, wait, what? This is a thing? Like, I've had friends who've had stillborns. I've had friends who had, lost their baby to like SIDS. I've had friends who've miscarried, but I never had anybody in my life who had to like medically terminate this far along in their pregnancy. I'm very, very choice. So I know people who, and support people who choose to have abortions for whatever reason. But, so in our minds, we were like, wow, okay, this might be a thing that we have to do if this is what they say it is. So again, when we got the heart thing done and they're like telling us what his life is going to be like as soon as he's born, we're like, okay, this isn't what we want for him.
And that's just for the heart. That wasn't even. I mean,
and they can't even. Yeah. That's the one fixable thing, because then they did the level 2 ultrasound for the full body anatomy scan, and they confirmed, okay, the Dandy Walker. He also didn't have like a nose or like a chin developed, or like genitals were not developing correctly either. And so now we're talking, okay, maybe these things can be fixed along the lines, but like you can't fix somebody's brain. You can't. And so the doctor was absolutely amazing. That's the thing I want to like pass off to like our team at Northwestern, and Lori's was so
glad.
So he at that point was, talking to us, what could his life look like? And it wasn't just beyond like mental. We weren't sure, like how would he be? Would there be delays? 100%, but we don't know the scale of it. Let's talk about physical. Will he be able to play sports? It's likely not. The coordination's just not going to be there. But we don't know how extreme it is. And at that point, like, he was like, at this point, I would recommend to my couples to terminate. And that was when it was like, it clicked in that we kind of already knew this, but now we're hearing it from like a medical professional that this is what they recommend, even though it's such a gray area. It was like, wow, this is becoming real. And I think, even though we knew our decision, we sat at the hospital for a really long time, just asking our doctor lots of questions. We just sat in a boardroom and he came in and out, asked us all the time how we were doing. And I think it was just, we didn't want to say, okay, we're doing it, because then we knew we had to leave and we had to schedule everything and it would become real.
Yeah.
But, we obviously did choose to terminate at that point because we didn't want our child to ever feel like pain, which we knew it's going to be a reoccurring thing, or like just like not be loved. We didn't want him to come into the world that things were going to just be so challenging and like right off the bat. And that is
no quality of life for him.
It's a very low quality of life, even though we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We knew it was not going to be what we would ever want to give to our child. And I know that is a tough subject, and a lot of people choose to continue on because they're like, well, what if? That's fine too. That's why we have choices.
That's why we need choice. Yeah.
Yes, that's why we need our choice to be able to go, okay, well, we also maybe want to have more kids down the line. And will that affect what we can give to more children too? If this child requires a lot more hand holding per se, and a lot more, medical expenses, you have to think about all these things. Of what your future is going to look like. So, we chose to terminate. And so a week later I went in and I chose to do a D&E, as I did not want my first laboring experience to be with a loss. I in hindsight, sometimes I still go, maybe that was the wrong decision. But knowing who I am, I think that would have really scarred me for life. And I think I had such a beautiful labor with my daughter.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been that way. The anxiety was already there with my second pregnancy to have it go through labor. So we did the D&E, and before that we did do an amniocentesis to run genetic testing to make sure that this wasn't something that was going to continue down the line, so we could take precautions if we needed to. And this is like, again, where Northwestern was absolutely fabulous, because the first round of genetic testing came back normal.
Okay.
After you just say goodbye to your son, and then they say it's normal, it's quite frustrating. But they were like, no, that's just looking, are all the chromosomes there? And they were. So they're like, we'll go one level deeper. Let's see if all the legs are on the chromosomes. That one came back normal too. So now I'm like, oh my God, what did we do? This is horrible.
Yep.
And they're like, no, we can go one more. I'm like, technically I think they can go several more, but luckily we just had to go one more. We're going to see if all the chapters are in the book. Chapters are in the book. So looking at all like the legs or all the parts there. And finally we did find out that there was a missing part of a leg on a chromosome, which diagnosed him with Rubenstein-Tay with a Dandy Walker malformation, like underneath that. And she was literally like, there's like nothing like this in the medical books. Like, this is a 0.0001% chance that something like this would happen, and it sucks because it happened to you. But the good news is that moving forward, it isn't something that we necessarily had to worry about happening again.
Okay.
Which is reassuring.
Yeah.
We still took like all the genetic testing. To our second pregnancy, just to make sure, as much as we could, that nothing could happen again. And then we did get pregnant almost like right away again. But that turned out to be a chemical pregnancy. And then it took like another, like almost a full year for my daughter to come along. So, and, you get the anxiety of going through it all again. I didn't want to tell anybody for the longest time. Not to mention between the loss and like Nora, all those feelings that come up of like other people announcing that they're pregnant, all those firsts that kind of come along, like, or like his due date, that was infuriating. So now I have like 2 dates, permanently marked in my brain of like his due date, and then that we lost him, or that we said goodbye. It's kind of hard if you want to put that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our overall story. I mean, I think what I like to talk about most is kind of how we told the world and how the political climate we were in, and
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
That's terrifying. You can totally, it's
okay.
whatever you're safe sharing. I love it.
Okay.
I love that you're sharing this. You are so brave. And there's a lot of moms that have experienced this that are sitting in silence and shame and guilt, because I always mess up the acronym, but TFMR moms who've, there's even more taboo around that part of pregnancy loss. So, and like, again, with the climate here and everything changing, it's even more scarier, because what if you share your story and you get arrested?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, that's the scary part.
No. And at this point, I'm like, I really don't care. Like, I'm here. I will speak my truth because, well, and like how you said, it's taboo. When this had happened to me, I will keep that person's, name out of this to keep it confidential. But when I first had it happen and I was kind of canceling everything on everybody, it was kind of I wasn't thinking at the time, and I was telling people kind of what was happening. That like, oh, we found out this diagnostic. I don't know what's going to happen in the next week. And so someone did reach out to me and was like, I wanted to let you know that we had to terminate at 13 weeks due to a chromosome abnormality. And I thought that she just had miscarried because that's what she said. And that's okay, because that's exactly what I did was when we decided to terminate at 21 weeks. I am literally a giant mess. So is my husband, and he's very private. So he don't want to tell, he doesn't want to tell anybody anything, but I am always been the pro-choice, very loud and proud about it. And just in general, a little bit more willing to share about, things about my life. And so, but my mom had mentioned, maybe don't say you terminated. I think that it could hurt some people, or people might judge you. And at that time, being vulnerable, I said, okay, this sounds like a good idea. I think I'm just going to put, we lost, but as a reminder, this was in September of 2016. We are 2 months away from the most ridiculous election so far of our time. And so, I side very, very liberal, very pro-choice. That is my number one, talking politics. And my family is more on the right-hand side. So although they were very, very supportive of our decision, like 100%, I was mad at them because I'm like, how can you vote for someone who's literally going to basically abolish my right to do that? Granted, we are so lucky that we live in a state that allows us to still make that choice up to 24 weeks, but that can change. Like, it's just, and then everybody's like, oh, don't worry, that's not a number one on his list to abolish, women's rights. Like, I'm sorry, that's not true. Like, we see what happened, that was clearly on the agenda. And so I was extremely angry with my parents. I mean, and I'm very close with my parents. My mom is like my best friend. My dad and I kind of have like a very like brother sister relationship. It sounds really weird, but like we like pick on each other. We're kind of that kind of thing. And so, but I was just so angry to the point where, like, we're a tattoo family. So, like, my dad wanted to get like a tattoo of like Sawyer's name on his arm, and my mom wanted to get. How the hell do you think that you can get a tattoo when you're literally voting against me? Like, I was a disaster. Not only was I for my hormones, and I'm just like, like, this is not, like, how can you do this to me? And, they tried explaining it in ways that it's not just about this one subject. And I'm like, I get it, but like, this is so fresh. How can I just not believe it? And then here we are, how many years later, 8 years later, and we're going into the same thing. And now throughout this time since I was telling people this was just a loss, as I was speaking to my therapist at the time, and I started realizing this is not what I wanted to do. I want to tell people what happened so that they know it's a thing, because I didn't really know it was a thing. I want to be someone that someone can come to talk to. There was a very few people like within my circle who knew the true story. But then as time went on and talks of Roe versus Wade being overturned, I just started being completely open about it. And so, now I basically will shout it from the rooftops. And obviously that's not something it's not something that I'm excited about to do. I don't want to have to do this, but it's kind of like he keeps living on through us being able to tell our story and being able to help. I've talked to a few moms who've had to terminate or chose to terminate. And they were able to reach out to me and was like, thank you. Like this, we don't connect with people who have lost stillborns or miscarriages. It doesn't feel right.
It's different.
It's different. It's a different type of thing because you are really put in this choice box where, So
it's hard because we've gotten to this place where we don't want to hurt anybody and we want everybody to, especially with this pregnancy loss, the whole thing, a loss is a loss, no matter how far along you weren't. Very true. Those were our babies, like whoever was carrying them, but they are different. Mm-hmm. Like there is a complete difference between a miscarriage and a full-term stillbirth. There is a difference between a stillbirth, miscarriage, and having to terminate for medical reasons. Because whereas, the miscarriage and stillbirth and like a chemical pregnancy, blighted ovum, incompetent cervix, all these things are uncontrollable.
Right.
Whereas with the terminating, you are having to make that choice, the best choice you can for you, your family, and your baby. And that is a different layer of guilt than what we go through in stillbirth and miscarriage.
Right. Yeah.
Because
it's the sense of like your body did something wrong, I think is still there. Because, I'm like, well, what did I do to make this all happen? At the end of the day, I'm like, nope, this is science. My body's doing what it wants. Science is doing what it wants. And so that's kind of still there with like the and a lot of people who have miscarried are like, what did I do wrong? Or, stillborns, what did I do? What did I miss? And so that's still kind of there, but there is that other layer of, yes, we had to literally sit there and make this choice that no one should ever have to make.
No.
About choosing the life of their child. It's hard to connect with others. You don't want to make anybody else feel bad, because I've had a lot of people be like, I want to talk to you about my miscarriage, but I feel like it's not as bad as yours. And I'm like, no. Like,
that's not what it's about.
No, that's not what it's about. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to walk you through like the steps of, the feelings, and that they're valid. And let's talk about, do you want to tell people? Are people being supportive? Like I will 100% be there, for you, whatever. I did have a friend who had a scare with possibly a very ill diagnosis of her baby. And so she came to me and was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I was raised Catholic. I don't believe in this. And so I told her my story full out, and she was like in tears by the end of it. And she's like, I think you're making me like change my mind, like my belief system on this, because I've never realized that this is a thing. Again, like people are having abortions at, early in their pregnancy because they don't want to be pregnant, which that's okay too. That's okay.
It is.
That's okay too. But like, when it's not talked about later, or if it is, it's made up silly things that is thrown around for like propaganda. People
literally throwing it around. Oh, she's just sleeping with whoever, getting pregnant, and then going to have an abortion for fun and doing it again.
Yeah.
It is
waiting until 24 weeks to do it. When I'm like, no. If you're at that point, that ship has sailed. You're in it. You want to be in it. Unless for some reason you didn't know that you're pregnant. Like, it's so much. Luckily, you know, she didn't have to make that choice, because it was just kind of a scare that came up on a scan.
Okay.
It was really good to know that I was able to talk with someone and she was willing to listen, and it literally changed her belief after this of like, wow, I feel in the wrong after this.
Well, unless you go through it or in that place where
that's kind of what happens, is that you don't know until you go through it. And that's kind of when people like to have topic discussions and they'll, you know, bring up the whole, well, I would never do that. And I'm like, well,
you don't know what you would do. You don't know what you would do until it happens.
Example. So like, well, what if you found out this? And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, okay.
No, it's, oh my God. It's like one of those things that is very hard to open your brain to, like, no, because nobody wants to talk about it in the first place. Nobody wants to talk about babies dying, period. We don't like to be uncomfortable as humans and people. And, you know, we have the right to free will and our own opinions, and, you know, and there's so many factors that, like, I grew up in a very small town. So what this means is that we're very closed off. We do not look outside of our little small town. We believe what everybody else believes. We're inundated with, you know, racism and all the things that these small towns are made up of. And anything outside of that, you know, somebody moves away. Oh yeah, they just, you know, they're losers. The stories that are made up. And so, like, especially when it comes to pregnancy loss, like, that was never talked about. Like, when I had my stillbirth, I don't remember how old she was at the time. I think she was 83-year-old grandma called me and told me that she had a stillbirth 40 years earlier, and she's never told anybody. And she had a stillbirth. She had a daughter, and they took her away, and she never got to see her, never got to hold her. It was never talked about again, because back then it was completely shameful. And they made it the mother's fault. You know, she had to have done something wrong to made that happen. My grandpa was not a very nice man, so I guarantee she had no support and had to act like she was never pregnant in the first place. And then had to go home and take care of her other 4 or 5 kids. Like, you know, right. So it's like, I don't know. I think I do this too for her as well, because she was silenced, like, she was 83, and if it happened in her 40s, like 50 years, silence.
And like, first of all, we must have grown up like in the same town, because same town. Like, I get it. I get that. And it was very religious, central, very Catholic heavy town, so, and very red. So yeah, that's just how it is in small towns, I think. And then people leave and they're different now. Anyway, how you were saying, it gives me the heebies, because hearing that she went through that and that she literally didn't get to experience any time, like, with her daughter afterwards to say goodbye, and then it was her fault. I feel like we're hearing that now. Like, this is coming, like, why is this happening again? Like, we've come so far with, I feel like we truly have, if you look at it, more people are talking about it, right?
Yeah.
We're creating this less of a taboo thing, but then there's the other side of it. The pendulum is trying to swing again, and we're going back to basically, you know, what your grandmother went through, was that now the woman is getting blamed. She can get thrown into jail because...
Yeah, now it's worse. Now it's not only we have to hide it, keep it, you know, because we're terrified of our actual well-being and, like, our freedom being taken away from it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. That's so scary to me, because because it's like, now we know better. Like, okay, way back when people were like, oh, well, maybe the mom did do something wrong, because we're not, you know, we weren't understanding. We didn't understand the science behind everything that happened, right? Does that make it okay? Absolutely not. It's still crappy. But now it's like, we know this isn't the mom's fault. Why are they being punished for it? Or, you know, especially if there is an ill diagnosis and then you want to terminate that's nobody's fault. They didn't, I didn't sit here and manifest that I wanted my child to have some weird genetic malformation, and so I didn't have to be pregnant again. Like, no, I wanted this pregnancy. If I could change anything about it, I would have, but I have no control over that. So it's so scary to me to like hear what she went through and then know that how many years later we're still dealing with this when we should be progressing. Accepting, and I'm sorry.
It's a lot. It's
so
well, that's the point of this podcast, right? It's like to provide a safe space, because there's really not many. I mean, I don't know, outside of social media and support groups, like, are we having these conversations? Like, we're not.
No.
At the doctor's office, I mean,
no,
not really.
So, I mean, you're totally right. It's basically stuck to the support groups and like, social media. But even then, it's like, why should we have to broadcast our thing? Broadcast our stuff? Like, we have to be the ones educating that this can happen, which is fine because it creates like a virtual support group and things like that. But like you said, like the doctor's offices and hospitals. So I know I'm actually on the Family Patient Advisory Committee at Northwestern McHenry Hospital.
Amazing.
So we kind of, our main job is to find out what's happening in the community and what people are saying about the hospitals and like the hospital group, like Huntley, Woodstock, and McHenry.
Okay.
Out here. What are people saying and what's the feedback, especially McHenry, because they went through that turnover of being NIMSY to Northwestern. That was a lot. So, for a while they had decided, I'm not sure if you're aware, but like McHenry stopped doing labor and delivery at their hospital. So if you're within the Northwestern group, you go to Huntley now for OB delivery. And they're connected with Lori's. And so it was very hot topic out here, and many people were vetoing it. And they didn't want that to happen because they felt like they had to drive farther, and it was risking, if they had a high-risk pregnancy, they were risking like losing their baby by driving an extra 10 minutes, which I get it. But I was one of like the spokespeople to talk to the state board about approving moving it to Huntley from McHenry.
Okay.
And I shared my experience and how amazing it was having Lori's side by side at Prentice.
Yeah.
So if we had chose to move forward with Sawyer, if he would have gone straight to Lori's, there was no flying to some other hospital. It was just all right there. Huntley's maternal fetal medicine is amazing too. Like they're all equipped for that. So mom and baby can stay together. And if you're worried about going an extra 10-minute drive, you talk to your doctor about a plan. You know what I mean? Like you put that in your plan of like, if yes. And that's the thing, even if you go to McHenry, they're not going to turn you away. That was the other thing, is that people are confused. If you were to go and you into the emergency department at McHenry and be like, I'm having a baby and I need to get out now, they're going to deliver. They always have an OB on call. They still have like a room that they can do that in. And same thing, like, with emergency C-sections and things. They're still equipped for it. It's just, it's not like they have this anymore. And we've talked about things. I've heard in the community, like, somebody had to go do a DNC after she had a miscarriage. And the worst thing that you have to do is when you check into the receptionist office, they ask you, what are you here for? What's your name? What are you here for? And I'm like, stop asking. Like, so I fight for things like that on that end of like, here's my story. Here's what I went through. And here's what I'm hearing other people go through. Stop asking these stupid questions. You see it on our chart.
Yes.
Ask us, ask our birthday, ask, what's our name? What time's our appointment? Our doctor? Anything. But what are you here for? I
need to talk to you more then, because I just had this conversation where it's like they're not reading the chart or they're not paying attention to the tag, whatever. Like, and I'm like, why? Because you're too tired. Because it's easier for you to ask and have them respond than to look. Right. I don't get it. But that, like,
a lot of times it is like lack of communication or lack of charting. And so we talk about that a lot about how, so then when we give our feedback, we have different, we meet like quarterly. We actually have one this Wednesday. We'll have like specialists come in and talk to our group and be like, here's what we're doing to better our communication and our charting and things like that. And they are trying, but you know, one person messes up and doesn't chart the right thing, or it's not listed on there, and you have to repeat yourself again and hope that that doctor or nurse writes down what you went through. Even, you know, just with anything. I mean, that's like when I went in for my, you know, my second pregnancy with my daughter, I told them right off the bat, I was like, this is going to be, I have high medical anxiety. Like, we went through a loss before this. Like, this is a huge deal. Like, I don't, like, we need to be cognizant of that. And so I think that's how it needs to be, like, with everything when it comes to, like you said, lost moms. We need to talk to our doctors, our hospitals, our nurses, even the people at the receptionist who may not have the degree to be, you know, to be in the office or in, like in the doctor's room with you, but there's the first person that you greet when you go in there. And the last thing the mom wants to do is be like, oh, well, I'm here for, you know, a DNC or a D&E. No, it's the lack of empathy. There's no compassion there.
I was going to say there's a lack of compassionate care just from that. Like, and that's the hard part. Like, I literally just had the same exact conversation. Like, the hospitals, I feel like sometimes the administrators and things think that there needs to be like, these changes are going to cost millions of dollars. But all it's going to take is a compassionate care training in loss, which is what I want to do. Like, I want to get my course into the hospital to train everybody in this. So it's like continuity of care. So nobody is like left behind, I guess is the word. But so nobody is in that position, because a mom who's going through loss for the first time, even like if it's her first pregnancy, and just knowing that she's having to make that decision, or like if her body's not expelling the baby itself, that DNC, abortion, all those things, again, are so taboo that saying them out loud, I will guarantee that receptionist is judging them, the people behind them, like they should not have to go through that.
Right.
Like, it is adding that shame and that guilt, and they've done nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
and like you said, this is not going to cost you an arm and a leg to simply have the training. Literally, just put a whole bunch of lost moms in a room and we'll tell you how to handle it.
Seriously.
And that's why I'm there. Cause and you can take that kind of information, I think, and put it in other things too. It doesn't have to just be, you know, about, you know, going in for loss and things like that. It can be really anything when it comes to, it's your personal private information. Why should we have to say this out loud? When we've got people in the waiting room, or again, like the receptionist, you probably see it on your chart, what I'm exactly here for. Why are you asking me? Ask me a different security question if that's something that you would. Like, just it's so frustrating.
Well, then you're in a beautiful position where you can help support that. And I mean, I think it's great that Huntley is taken over then all the OB and that, because would you rather go to a menial hospital that just does general OB care, or would you rather go the 10 minutes to get to a hospital that has maternal fetal medicine specialists, OBs? Like, if something is wrong, they got you, they'll fly you out if they have to. Like, if they can't do it there.
That's literally what I said, like the verbatim exactly what I said. Seriously, like,
who do you want to be taken care of?
I was like, and when we were in the city, and because people are, you know, out here, everything's like 30 minutes away, right? Well, and, you know, we were living in Chicago at the time. Northwestern was the farthest freaking hospital because we were in Hyde Park. I'm right next to like University of Chicago. I could have gone there, but hell no, I wanted the best care I could possibly get, which was Northwestern Prentice. Being connected to Lori's there, like I could have, you know, I had to be induced, but if I had gone into labor, I could have been in Chicago traffic for 30 freaking minutes. I was still gonna go. Like, you know, like kind of how the way I look out here is like, let's put it in perspective. Like, you can just fly there. And again, if something was truly an emergency, nobody's going to turn you away at an emergency department. Like, and then all the other concerns, talk to your doctor about it. Like, come up with a plan. It's the best place it could, you know, so that was my argument for it. And then.
Yeah. Well, I think too, though, pregnancy like giving birth is seen as an emergency instead of a natural thing that just happens, regardless if it takes 30 minutes. If that baby is coming in 20, you're not going to stop it. Even if you were at that hospital, like they can't,
right.
You get like, it's just, there's just a lot.
Yeah. Well, you know, like how you said, like our bodies, we couldn't control, you know, if we had a loss, like we can't control that. Just like we can't control really when the baby's going to come. And I think that is really scary to a lot of women who are like, oh my God, now I have to go farther. I have more loss of control. You know, it's change, it's everything. I mean, it's just, it's a lot, but it was good that everything kind of switched over. And now, we just talk about kind of everything that's being implemented in the hospital. And I'm just there. I'm always kind of taking that side of like, okay, well, how do we be empathetic and how do we communicate to our patients? how do we do that? That's really all I am there for, basically, at the end of the day, because that's my background.
It's so important.
But like, I don't have any medical background. I'm like, I'm a wedding planner, but I've had so much experience like going through like the trauma of everything. I'm like, okay, so how can I bring that type of conversation to the table?
But that's the point. All of us people who are not doctors are just regular people who need that regular person there. Like it's, that's who we're
people in a room trying to determine, I'm like, you know, empathy and stuff like that about how to do it. That's not, yes, some doctors have great bedside manner and then others just do not. And they're just really, really good at doing what they do, which is medical and science. That's great. I couldn't do that, but you also have to have the care team in there, which I do find that hospitals are really starting to do that, like have a specific group that is like a care team, who more does exactly what we're talking about, trains to have that communication be seamless and so that way people don't have to repeat themselves.
Yeah. Does Huntley, they're one of the hospitals I need to contact, but do they have a bereavement team, like a bereavement coordinator, palliative care?
I believe so. And I think I think he was in our meeting last time for at McHenry, like the palliative care, or I don't know what they call it. It was one of he did come in and kind of talk briefly about it, but I could have talked to him for hours. I don't know because I am only at the McHenry one. I wish I was more at the Huntley one, but it makes no sense based on my location. But I can find out. I have contact of like the lead nurse that is over there, who handles all that, and we can always put you in touch because it's a subject on its own.
It is, I know, and it's always hard to figure out who to talk to because there's a lot of like, oh, I don't know who does that, or I don't know who heads that.
No one, that's no one's job. I don't know.
I know, so it's frustrating, but okay, well, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much for sharing about everything and about your loss, your baby. And it's just always remember how brave it is to actually do that. I don't think I've had people be like, do you really talk about this stuff on the podcast? Isn't that scary? I'm like, I've never viewed it that way because I'm literally just talking.
Right.
Like this is our freedom is we're allowed to talk about whatever we want to talk about. So I just didn't view it that way. But now I'm like, it is actually very brave that people are sharing their story and allowing it to be heard by others. It's scary. Right. It's, being judged or,
I wasn't doing this right away. Like I wasn't having that conversation. And so, even, I don't even know how many years later, it's like 7-8 years later now, I still kind of get nervous talking about it. I don't know how I'm going to react. I still don't even know how I'm going to react half the time when my friends tell me they're pregnant or what they're having. I still don't know how I'm going to react that day. Maybe I'll be in my feels and I'll get emotional. But it's still kind of a weird thing to talk about it, but it feels so good.
Yeah.
It just feels so good to talk about it, especially with someone like another lost mom. Lower losses are different. It's still, we're all in the same boat as far as what it feels like to not have one of your kiddos with you. So
I know. And I feel too, though, every conversation you have is just a little more piece of you that gets healed. That's how I feel. It just lends a little bit more like grace to yourself. And like maybe you see it in a different light. Something somebody says makes you like, oh, wow, I never thought about it like that. Or, there's something that always comes out of every conversation that just changes it a little better, makes it, feel a little better than it did before. I don't know. That's just how I feel. But
I get it. The more I talk about it, I'm like, this is part of the journey. This is why.
Yeah.
Like, if I have to do something with it. Like when I grieve, I like to have a purpose. Put that grief into. And so for me, it's talking about this. So as soon as I saw your post about it, I was like, oh, gotta jump on it.
I know.
This is my purpose. This is my way of grieving. Like I need to
yeah.
And I love talking with anybody about it anytime. So,
well, before we wrap up, one more question. I was like, I'm always thinking like, maybe I should ask everybody the same question, like other podcasts do, but like, so what would be your greatest piece of advice for anybody who loses a baby or has to make that choice to terminate? What one piece of tangible advice could you give them?
Oh God. That's so hard.
I know.
Okay. So I think my advice would be, that it's okay to listen to others, and to grieve with others, and to hear personal experiences. But at the end of the day, this is your story. So, it should be either like if it's yourself or you have, your spouse, it's just you two. And it's okay to have support from others and to listen to other people's stories. But at the end of the day, that is your child, that is your family. And you and your medical team should make a decision kind of within that little realm. And it's okay to listen to outside
so
people.
personal.
Make a decision, and that means making your actual choice of what you want to do with your child. And then afterwards too, I wish I wouldn't have taken my mom's advice and done the whole, oh, we just lost. If there's one thing I regret, that's totally it, because it just wasn't me. But again, you're in a vulnerable situation, and that's okay.
Yeah.
All these feelings that you're feeling are totally valid. And same thing with after. When you get really, really angry that someone tells you that they're pregnant, it's okay.
It's okay. Totally.
Absolutely horrible. I had a friend come to me and she goes, so-and-so told me that, she's pregnant. And I had that happen to me too. It was one of our chemical pregnancies, and my best friend told me 4 days later, I hate to tell you this, but I'm pregnant. And I hung up the phone and I just got into my office and cried, because I'm like, this sucks. I'm mad at you for telling me, even though I know you want me to. You wanted to tell me, and that's great, and I want you to, we're friends, but I'm mad.
Yeah, it's normal. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's normal. I hated everybody who was pregnant after I lost Evelyn. And the biggest part was that I lived in a military community. So, and the school bus picked the kids up at the entrance. So we would all walk, and there was 2 women who were pregnant at the same time I was. So I'm walking to the bus stop, in tears a month later, and she has her newborn, and I'm like, I fucking hate you. And I don't really hate this woman. I was just it's the devastation, and it's not fair why her baby survived and why mine didn't. It's all normal. And that's what I try to normalize, is those feelings. It's okay. You're going to feel hate and love, hate and joy, at the same time. Yep. It's wild.
It's not pertaining to pregnancy things. I remember I would go to Target I would find something that I would really, really love. And I'd be like, oh my God, I love this. I'm going to get it. And then the next aisle over, I would be sobbing in tears, because I'm like, why am I happy? I'm not allowed to be happy. This is not okay. And so it's that kind of thing too. It's okay to have joy. It's okay to have, hatred towards other people.
Yeah.
Upon it by any means.
Yeah.
But it's okay if you need to take a step back from your friend who's pregnant. And I hope that you have a good enough relationship. That would be that's my other advice, is that if you have to take a step back from a friendship or a relationship because it is bringing up feelings, I hope that your relationships are strong enough to withstand that, because it can do some damage. It really can. But if it doesn't withstand it, well, then maybe it's just not your season to be friends right now.
Yeah. And it's also very surprising at the people who do show up for you and then the people who don't show up for you. It is, it's wild. I say that a lot, but it really is.
Whole other topic of conversation.
Totally. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you were able to share with us and share Sawyer and everything you've gone through. And it's so awesome.
Moving
Always
forward, hoping, we still continue to talk about this, but don't have to hope and pray that we get all our choices taken away and everywhere.
Yeah. No joke. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And we will be in touch.
All right. Sounds good.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pregnancy Loss Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I created a guide on 20 ways to celebrate your angel baby. It gives you 20 amazing ways to celebrate their birthdays or ways to just remember them on any given day. If you want to download it, head over to valenweb.com/resources and click the link. I hope you guys have a great week. See you next time.